All right, greetings everybody from Hannover Messe. We're here with Pat Walsh, the CMO of InfluxData. Welcome, Pat.
Thanks.
And we're Will.
Yeah, hey, good to be
Welcome
here.
with Litmus. So,
Yeah.
one of the things that was announced today that InfluxData, the provider of time series databases, was strategic partnership with Litmus, the industrial age data, integrating the InfluxDB 3 Enterprise with the Litmus Edge. What made this the right partnership, and maybe what does each side bring to the table?
Yeah, so the partnership, we've been partners for quite a while, working together to help industries use the data that they have on the shop floor in a more meaningful way, and then see if they can kind of bridge the OT and IT gap. But right now, we thought that with the challenges that are coming about with industrial AI and the need for ever increasing volumes of data and fidelity of data, it just made sense for us to tie up our solutions even tighter than we have in the past.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think customers are really asking us, hey, how do we balance some of the investments that we're making on the edge versus in the cloud? And how do we have a more dynamic and data platform to be able to navigate uncertainty at this point? They know they need to do agentic AI. They've heard about industrial AI, and they're thinking, well, how do I position myself so I've got the right data architecture and infrastructure to have the flexibility now, but also in the future too.
Got it. So flexibility, if you don't mind, just a little bit. What's the core problem this partnership solves? I know you've been here for a while, and why did you feel now is the vital to sort of strengthen the partnership?
Yeah, I think the main thing is that many people have been using data historians traditionally to manage their data, and that's been fine up until a point. And I think right now, when you see things like industrial AI, it really demands that data be captured at higher fidelity and at higher rates. And it kind of stresses those legacy data historians. And so the reason that we did it now is that, we're seeing that demand. We're seeing that organizations see the benefit in things like industrial AI, but they're held back maybe by the historical solutions that they've had in place. And so we really were responding to the demands that our mutual customers were asking to have met.
Yeah, I had one word to that from a timing standpoint about why now. I think it comes down to scale. I mean, we've been chatting with customers the past 3 to 5 years. They've been doing hundreds of pilots or proof of values or proof of concepts, however you want to put it. And now the pressure is on, now that agentic AI and industrial AI is in the news every day, now there's top-down pressure to actually scale that across an enterprise. And once you talk about scaling something, it becomes less of a science project, more of an enterprise solution that requires a data infrastructure that is not just flexible, but also resilient. And I think certainly that's something that InfluxDB brings to the table.
Now, you both touched a little bit on the importance of context for industrial data. What does context-rich data actually mean in practice, and why does it matter for industrial AI?
Do you want to speak to? I can start.
Yeah, jump in and I'll.
Yeah. So what we see is that when you collect all of this data at the edge in an organization, if you just have the information without any relevance to the site, the system, the overall process that's being affected, that single data point is not as meaningful, particularly in terms of the way that people are trying to analyze it more and more today. And so when we talk about contextualizing the data, it's bringing that to the fore. But you could maybe speak to it more directly since you guys are experts in the contextualization.
Yeah, sure. I mean, really, if you get a temperature reading with a date timestamp, how do you take action on that? I mean, you may not even know whether there's a Fahrenheit or a centigrade. Well, that really matters. And even matching up different time zones, and then understanding, well, which factory, which line, which particular asset this came in. And then you add additional contextual data around from a ERP or MES system that tells you, well, here was the work order we're working on. It's for this particular customer. It's this particular product. I mean, that's where the context actually gives you a way to make a decision. So for me, context is the difference between having data and having insight that you can take action on.
Yeah, and the need to support that is one that we mutually benefit each other on. Litmus through connectivity to all these different data sources and the ability to normalize that data, and then InfluxDB with our ability to handle high cardinality situations. So that really helps you capture the context of that information in real time.
Yeah. Right now, with the industrial AI moving closer to the edge, what's the one thing that teams can now automate at the edge that you couldn't do before?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the great thing about the edge is I would put it threefold. One, it really impacts the response time or latency around a particular workload or capacity or a use case that you want to do. I mean, inevitably, a cloud solution is going to have some latency. So when we think about use cases that are impacted, latency is an important issue. Security is a second important issue. Industrial companies in particular take into account. And then, of course, cost. And so those three factors are moving some more of the use cases to the edge. A couple that come to mind, which are really important from a latency standpoint, is scrap, where you've got to make decisions, in near real time about changes in the process and changes in the manufacturing in order to figure out, is this something you can keep and sell, or is it something you've got to throw away? I think another thing on the process side is recipe optimization. You actually see a batch of whether it's beer or chemicals or any other substance you have a recipe for, and it starts to drift off of your target. Well, if you don't take action really quickly, you can actually lose that entire batch, which is, dollars down the drain. So we see use cases, particularly around quality and scrap, where latency, cost, and security are critical. Those things are moving much more quickly than everything else.
Yeah, and I think the really cool thing is that historically on the shop floor, they were limited in terms of the type of analytics they could do and insights they could see. And I think too often they felt like they were beholden to the IT part of the organization to provide that analysis. And now that we're bringing it to the shop floor, I think the use cases have yet to be identified. I think our customers will determine what are the meaningful and interesting insights that they can now gain, given that they'll have this capability where they hadn't had it before.
A lot more to touch on security, Will, but we won't double click there right now. I want to understand a little bit about what's fundamentally different about doing it as an integrated solution.
Yeah, I kind of put it like getting a bunch of Legos versus getting a Lego set with instructions and support to actually make sure everything is put together well. So I think where we've been careful is in putting together this partnership is not just the technical guidance, reference architectures, documentation, but also a set of system integrators that have the capability to deliver, to scale, and to support that solution. So I think that's the biggest difference. It's you can have a set of tools and tell someone good luck, or you can actually provide a lot of guidance, documentation, and scalability support to make sure it's an enterprise solution and not just a pilot that runs at one site.
Yeah, and I think with the reference architecture that we're showing at the event this week, building that together, our two technical teams coming together, I think really saw the synergies and were really interested to work in a way that we could create that end solution as opposed to the two pieces of infrastructure that would be brought together by a third party, an SI. So I think there's benefit in that reference architecture exercise as well. And as Will points out, the finished solution, brings some thought and foresight to it where, it allows you to kind of see the return on investment that much more quickly because you're not having to construct it yourself.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when you have your technical person call you back and say, "Hey, I appreciate the extra work," which they rarely do, but this was good because, wow, can you believe we can stream real-time data at the edge, contextualize it, cleanse it, do calculations, and really meet the needs of the shop floor.
Mm-hmm.
And we can take a subset of that, stream it into the cloud to do longer-term predictive modeling without interrupting operations. And that's where we get excited about the different use cases that are available, because it's something that we can solve problems on the shop floor in real time. And we can also solve longer term problems around, equipment optimization, or, capital expenditure planning long term with models in the cloud. So it's kind of nice to see that excitement on the technical team about what business outcomes that they can drive.
Got it. And we'll make sure we'll add a link to the reference architecture you had in mind, also the press release.
Yeah.
But how does it work with the existing historian? Is it a replacement or is it augmentation? What are we talking about here?
Yeah.
Yeah, look, there's a lot of investment in data historians, and so replacement is a bit strong. In fact, what we're seeing is right now, we've up until now been augmenting solutions, as I mentioned earlier, where they may be challenged in terms of the new use cases, really driven by industrial AI, where you need the finer fidelity, where you need the higher performance and such. And so it works in conjunction with the investments that customers have made. The one, area that I would say that we are seeing that will come in and it'll be a bit greenfield, that's renewable energy. They don't have the, history of big investment in data historians. And so they just start anew and start fresh, and they're able to, use us in a way that allows them to capitalize on all of the data that they're capturing in this high speed, high fidelity manner.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing customers want options and flexibility. Doesn't mean they're always going to go down that path, but I think historically, customers had felt they were a bit constrained on some of the past technology investments they made. I think one of the things, our commitment is around an open reference architecture that enables customer a lot of high performance, but also a lot of flexibility for the future. As Pat said, listen, we know what some of the core use cases are today. Frankly, we have no idea what the use cases are going to be in 18 to 24 months. So you got to build in flexibility to take advantage of what the future is going to bring us. And that's going to be fun to watch. And so our goal is, hey, flexibility, a foundation that's flexible, but also scalable.
Scalable, yes.
And maybe expand a little bit, since we're talking about outcomes, perhaps, right? How quickly can teams go from deployment to actually getting value, and what does the first win look like, at least based on what you're seeing right now, not 18 months from now?
Yeah, I mean, it's very common for us. We'll engage with the customer. We actually encourage to say, let's start with 3 sites minimum, because if you can't scale a solution, it doesn't matter how good the solution is. And it's common for us to take 1 or 2 use cases across 3 sites, and in 60 to 90 days, have really good insight and a positive ROI. And then once we demonstrate you can scale to 3, there's not much of a difference of scaling to 30 or 300. So that's what we encourage, because we don't want to build an architecture or a solution that's only going to work on one line or one site. We've got to be able to scale it across the organization. So that's a pretty common, time frame for us with customers.
Yeah, and I'd say using InfluxDB as the system record for industrial data alongside Litmus Edge, on the shop floor at the edge, what we're seeing is that ability to have data in a way that's cost effective. If you look at the current solutions, and when you're collecting data in the cloud, it's just a replica of data that's in the data historian. It's pretty expensive. We have, interesting ways that we can compress the data, and we store it in object store. So it's a much more cost-effective way to go about it. So this quick ROI there. And then additionally, when you look at having that data available for data analytics now across not just the site, but multiple sites, and taking that data together, I think the ROI on that as well is something that most solutions are siloed in a way that you can't gain those insights. So there's a nice positive effect when they look at, information across the entirety of their operation.
Yeah, and I think it's about flipping the switch, where in the past, organizations wanted to move faster. And I actually think that technology was the constraint. either because of cost or licensing or the way it was architected across or between sites. Actually, now we're seeing the shift that actually the technology is not the limitation. It's actually the organization that is the constraint. Well, that's great. That puts it in the hand of the customer because now they can make changes and adjustments internally, and they're not constrained from a technology standpoint. So really, the limitation is the speed of the customer, not the capability of the technology.
Got it. And I want to end with a twofold question. One is, what does the partnership go from here, and what should customer be watching out at Hannover Messe?
Yeah, I'll touch on a little bit what I said before is, the exciting thing is if you get a solid data foundation in place that's flexible and scalable and cost effective and meets the needs around latency and cost, well, all of a sudden there are no constraints. And really the limitation is the creativity and the imagination of the customer, and the speed on which you move is the speed of the customer's innovation. So I think the exciting thing for me is I actually have no idea what the use cases in 24 months are going to be. And that's the most exciting thing from my standpoint. So I think really tremendous opportunity in working with customers and partners over the next couple of quarters.
Yeah, I was going to say on the partner front, we have mutual partner in AWS today. And, the partnership, as we grow it and as we look at, more functionality that we can bring to the solution, maybe even more tighter integration at the edge. What we also see is that there's partnerships to provide even greater analysis of the data that we're bringing to the organizations, our customers. And so just following that, as we say, who knows where the customers want to take it, but I think expanding the partnership to our mutual ecosystem and seeing how we can bring even more value by a tighter integration.
Thank you both for the insights. And if you're in the audience, have questions, feel free to leverage the hashtag you see on the screen